The way we experience our gender identity can be difficult to describe, especially if it's something you're not really used to thinking actively about on a day-to-day basis. And that can be a problem when we're trying to serve gender-diverse youth, because if you're not used to thinking about your gender in a deep way, it can be hard to understand why gender dysphoria is so troubling for those who suffer from it. It's hard to empathize with an experience you're unfamiliar with. Let's try an activity together. First off, close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Sit back in your chair, get comfy, and think about this. What do you like about being your own gender? What do you like about being a woman or being a man or however you identify? What are those things that stand out for you? Is it getting to wear your hair long or short without judgment? Is it the clothes you wear or the makeup you put on? Or maybe you like not having to worry about makeup. Do you like the shape of your body? The curves of your muscles? Do you enjoy having a light feminine voice or a low masculine one? Or maybe you like having a voice that's more androgynous. They could go either way. Think about the roles you occupy. If you're a parent, do you like that people see you as a mother or as a father? Do you take pride in being a son, being a daughter? There are no wrong answers here, but think specifically about the things about yourself that you enjoy because of your gender. Got a few things in mind? Okay. Next, I want you to imagine this. Imagine you wake up one morning, just like you do every day. You open your eyes, look down at your body, and it's the wrong body. Overnight, you somehow magically switched your gender, and now you're totally different. All your favorite parts of your gender experience that you just reflected on a second ago are gone now. You've basically got to readjust everything. If you went to bed a woman and woke up a man, you couldn't wear your old clothes. You'd have to learn how to shave your face and dress and act differently. If you went to bed a man and woke up a woman, you'd have to learn how to wear feminine clothing, shave your body, put on makeup. This has implications far beyond our outward appearance, too. Think about the other new ways the differences in your body now affect you. If you were male before, and now you have a female body, you can possibly get pregnant. Think about what that means. Or if you were a woman before, and the idea of being able to carry children was important to you, you now have to handle the realization that you can't get pregnant. You have different health conditions to consider, different roles to play, different behaviors expected of you. What would that mean to you, to have your experience of gender flipped like that? Would that be easy to adjust to? Would this experience be jarring, unsettling? Would it feel wrong, like your body didn't match who you are? I want you to hold on to all those feelings imagined change arises in you. Now consider this. Imagine that instead of suddenly changing overnight, you were born into this wrong body from the start. You start to notice something is off early in life, and the feeling becomes more extreme as you hit puberty and your body starts to change into the wrong form in more drastic ways. Imagine how it would feel to grow body parts and features that are just wrong, are not you. I'm not supposed to have breasts. Why am I growing breasts? Or, why am I growing facial hair? Why is my voice becoming so deep and masculine? Also, think about the way people see you because of your gender. Think about what roles and behaviors they expect from you and how that goes against what you feel inside. Imagine going through that experience your whole life and knowing there was nothing that could be done about that. That was just your life. You were born into the wrong body and you grew up in the wrong body. Think about the emotions that would create in you. And now, open your eyes. Take a deep breath, shake it off. You're back in your present self, in the body that you know and love. That was tough, right? It's an unsettling experience when you really dig in and think about it. But unfortunately, that is a big part of the experience for many transgender people. The hopelessness, despair, and dread of growing into a body that is simply just wrong for them, and that doesn't match who they are. The isolation they feel when nobody else around them understands or thinks that they're stupid or sick or crazy for feeling that distress. That dread and isolation can drive crippling anxiety, fear, and self-hate, especially when the person experiencing it is also worried about how their friends and family would react if they found out that they're questioning their identity. And unfortunately, that pain and despair has driven many to self-harm and suicide. Luckily, there's hope. With inclusive gender constructs, supportive environments, and gender-affirming medical care, such as hormone replacement therapy, transgender people can regain control over their lives and bodies and make changes to physically and socially transition toward the gender identity they actually align with. These affirming practices save lives every day. The better equipped we are to handle gender-diverse youth in an affirming, accepting way, the more lives we can save.
So, there's an underlying thing that happens quite often. It kind of sets up the groundwork for things to maybe not go very well for when we're working with kids, particularly LGBTQ youth or any other minority youth, right, who are intersecting with our systems. The word is assumptions. Yeah. I see a lot of heads right now. Assumptions. Yes, we know about those, right?
Right.
All right, so I'm just going to ask a blanket question. How many of you have experienced some kind of assumption made of you?
Oh my God.
I think everybody in this room should raise their hand. Somebody's assumed something.
So, if we've all experienced an assumption, just how did that make you feel? How did it feel to have someone make an assumption about you?
Less than. Yeah. I'm not meeting what I should be meeting. I mean, I just share a little bit. I was in the Marine Corps from the time 18 to 38. Of those 20 years, 18 of them I was in the closet. So, and it's all based on fear. Some people look at me and they say, she couldn't be. And then my partner comes and she's like, oh yeah, she's gay, for sure, you know, because I'm not the most feminine thing in the world, but yeah. So, you know, assumptions have been made, and, you know, I was in the Marine Corps, and only queers and people that want to get married join the Marine Corps. That was the idea back then, and, yeah.
I'm gonna be very honest. I'm gonna be like, really cute? I didn't care. Because of the simple fact that I've always known who I was. My mom and dad loves me, family loves me. Now, of course, everybody cracks their jokes every now and then, but I'm also one of the biggest in the family. So pick and choose your battle. But at the same time, I have seen it where kids have been, you know, they've been devastated. You know, I've seen, and this is the type of teacher that I was. And I'm gonna be very honest with you guys. I had a student that decided he was gonna wear some wedges. And we're in the black belt, we're in the Bible Belt area, right? So of course he was getting a lot of heat from that. And then some people were saying, you're not gonna make him take those off? I said, no, he better know how to walk in them. Now hurry up and get down that hallway before you're late to class. Okay, if that's what you wanna do, do it. I'm not here to make you feel uncomfortable. If you want to wear a pair of wedges or lug boots and it's 97 degrees outside and you got on a pair of lug boots, more power to you. I'm here, all love. Don't be late to my class. And you better have your homework.
there's a direct relationship between support and the ability to brush off people's assumptions, right? The more we feel solidified in who we are and what's going on, we have that support around us, it's a lot easier to kind of brush off when people come at you with those assumptions, right? For our kiddos who are moving through the child welfare system, they by nature are probably already lacking some support here.
Yes.
So when they start meeting assumptions, right, do you think there might be behavior changes as a result of somebody else stating assumptions about them?
I remember in 7th grade, I had some, it was the 90s, everything was neon and electric and all that kind of thing. And, I had a hot pink, I think, Trapper Keeper, and it's just because I loved it. Well, just the names I was called that. I mean, just before school had even started. To have those assumptions thrown at you that can come out of complete left field. I never associated liking a color with my sexuality. I did then, I'll tell you right then. And so I kind of stopped liking pink and purple for a long time. And it just kind of stinks. Now, I'm back with all the colors. I like orange now because nobody likes orange and I feel bad. But it's interesting, I kind of shut down from it. I kind of stopped developing and finding out who I was just because of someone's assumption.
One of my first grade teachers came to me and said, hey, I think I have a student that's gay because she's always wearing boys' clothes. Oh, they have a uniform. Always had boys' clothes on. Would you talk to her? And I thought, what am I going to say? What am I going to say?
That's a lot of assumptions.
So I never did, and I guess she's fine. But I just thought, wow, that's weird. What am I going to say to her? It's okay to wear boys' clothes? Who cares? So.
How do you think these assumptions are impacting them? What kind of assumptions might they meet when they're working through the child welfare system? Whether that's working with, the court system in some capacity or working with the Child Advocacy Center, from the front desk all the way to the counselor that they're working with. How are these kids possibly being impacted by assumptions? And what do we think the result of that is going to be?
Just that fear of not being accepted, that fear of repercussions.
Anytime an identity is being assumed, upon you, right, as the child, you're going to internalize that, and you're either going to try really hard to meet that assumption, or you're going to stray the furthest thing away from it, right? And it's going to be even harder from that internal struggle piece, that child already likely questioning, who am I?
Right.
Who do I love? What do I like even? What are my interests? Because I think it's so easy, in today's culture to drive a stake through who the child is rather than letting them organically become and be themselves. They don't have to fit into a box. That's okay. Whatever you are, whoever you are, however you love and seek to be loved is yours. That's one of the most beautiful things about it.
Some children come into our system because they are LGBTQ. They are rejected.
Yeah.
I have had experience with children whose parents said, not in my house. And so literally threw a 12-year-old out because of that. And so when we make up assumptions, when they've already had this basic rejection from the person that's supposed to be your safe space, then we are just compounding their trauma in ways that can't be imagined because they don't know us when they come to us. We're a stranger. It's terrifying. And then we make an assumption and we just create more damage.
When you are kind of outcast and told that you were being rejected, you feel like you've lost that love. Mm-hmm. So I would say it's going to be very difficult to then trust someone else to tell that story because you see how easy it is to lose that love or or whatever the case may be. Obviously, not obviously, but more often than not, the parents still love the child, but may not like them or like those actions for that time. It's about just finding that trust to tell that story because of that assumption.
There's some big risks with making assumptions, right? We're going to put this kiddo in a position where they feel like they can't trust the people that are trying to help them.
Right.
And as we've already tapped in on, this is often on the heels of trauma, right? This is why these kids are in the system in the first place. Something has happened. They're already trying to figure out, how do I create safety? I've lost safety. How do I, know that other people are safe? And so if we make a bunch of assumptions on top of a situation where we're already feeling like the world is not a safe place, as each one of you have mentioned, the potential for damage is exponential at that point, right?
I think with the assumptions, especially coming from the professionals, you just killed the freedom of that child. And I see it as a sense of you just really abolished the opportunity to get to know this child. You just missed out on the opportunity for this child to open up to you. You just missed out on the opportunity to help guide this child and, see if you can get in there and find out those negative conditions.
Yeah.
You just missed out on that opportunity because of your assumptions. Oh, on paper, it looks like you're this, and this. As a teacher, you guys, I was told so many times, oh, such and such is horrible. He's bad, or she's this, she's that.
Yeah.
I said, okay, that's nice. That's probably how they were for you. And I disregard that, because when you walk in that door, when you cross that threshold, you just walked into the door of a new opportunity. The child needs to feel like, okay, you know what? I can come to you. I can come to you. I can come to you. I can be in the court system and not be judged solely based upon what it looks like on paper.
And for the professional that denies that child like their identity too, they're also taking a stab at that child's resiliency as well. Like, we know as professionals in the field that kids only need one protective person in their life, despite any adverse child experience that they went through, to have a shot at something bigger, greater, more amazing than they probably could have ever seen for themselves. And we can't take that away from them. It's not fair.
We take away not just that safe place, but again, being your authentic self is so important. And I know a lot of adult gay people who are not allowed to be their authentic self except within their chosen community. And I don't want that for this generation. And so especially kids who come into the child welfare system have already experienced rejection, whether intentional or not, but they feel rejection. And then for us to make an assumption, then we're just rejecting them all over again. And they'll go deeper into themselves, and a lot of times that comes out by acting out, as we like to say. Which instead of, I always say when they're acting out, I always ask the question, what have we not done to meet their needs?
If you are talking to somebody who's working in the child welfare system, if you could tell them how to not make assumptions, what would you train them to do?
Every single one of us comes from a vastly different upbringing and environmental influences. Just tell that person, it doesn't matter how old you are, everyone deserves a fair shake.
We can, if we're worried about pronouns or something, we can ask, or we can just use they, for everybody till the person says it, or just let the child take the lead. Honor what the child says, and a lot of child welfare professionals struggle. It's better with the transgender youth, and they'll say, oh, her or him, whatever pronoun. I heard a professional say one time, whatever pronoun they're using this week. And I said at the end of our staffing, I said, I know we all know this, but I just want to remind us that it's very important to respect the child's choice of pronouns. And it was because the child did keep going back and forth. Okay. I think that's the definition of being a child. So, just being respectful.
Let that child be the subject matter expert of their life. Let them tell you. And here's the main thing. Tame your advice monster in that space. Tame that advice monster. Well, when I was your age, this isn't what I did. Well, baby, you ain't me. You know what I mean? Right. You ain't me. You know what I mean? So when I say tame the advice monster, you shouldn't compare yourself internally to this child, because oftentimes that's what happens with the LGBT youth. Oh, well, my parents would have never stood for that. This isn't about you.
Right.
This isn't your fight right now. I mean, clearly I'm here because I need some help. I'm in need of some sort of service. For you to basically diminish what I'm going through right now and not allow me to be that subject matter expert, and you don't want to listen, you won't allow me to lead, you won't allow me to be my authentic self, you're robbing me of this experience. Tame that advice monster.
Gender identity is one's internal sense of being male, female, neither of these, both, or another gender or genders. Everyone has a gender identity, including you. Identity begins to form as early as 2 years old. For transgender people, their sex assigned at birth and their own internal sense of gender identity are not the same, and this could take some time to figure out. The gender binary of female and male are among 6 common gender identities. Gender presentation is the physical manifestation of one's gender identity through clothing, hairstyle, voice, body, shape, etc. Many transgender people seek to make their gender expression, how they look, match their gender identity, who they are, rather than their sex assigned at birth. Sex assigned at birth is the assignment and classification of people as male, female, intersex, or another sex based on a combination of anatomy, hormones, and chromosomes. It is important that we don't simply use sex because of the vagueness of the definition of sex and its place in transphobia. Chromosomes are frequently used to determine sex from prenatal karyotyping, although not as often as genitalia. Chromosomes do not always determine genitalia, sex, or gender. It is important to note that sexual and romantic attraction can be from a variety of factors, including but not limited to gender identity, gender presentation, and sex assigned at birth. Sexual orientation is about who you're attracted to and who you feel drawn to romantically, emotionally, and sexually. Sexual orientations include gay, lesbian, straight, bisexual, and asexual. Sexual orientation is different from gender identity. Gender identity isn't about who you're attracted to, but about who you are. This means that being transgender, feeling like your assigned sex is very different from the gender you identify with, isn't the same thing as being gay, lesbian, or bisexual. So let's quickly review some definitions. A lesbian woman is romantically and/or sexually attracted to other women. A gay person is romantically and/or sexually attracted to people of the same sex and/or gender as themselves. This term is often used to describe men who are attracted to other men, but some women and gender-diverse people may also describe themselves as gay. A bisexual person is romantically and/or sexually attracted to people of their own gender and of other genders. The term bi plus is also sometimes used to describe the multiplicity of bisexualities. The term multigender attraction, or MGA, may also be used for those who experience attraction to more than one gender over a lifetime, regardless of self-identity or labels. An asexual person does not experience sexual attraction, but may experience romantic attraction toward others. A pansexual person is romantically and/or sexually attracted to people of all genders, binary or non-binary. A heterosexual or straight person is someone who is attracted to people of the opposite gender to themselves. An ally is a person who considers themselves a friend and active supporter of the LGBTQ community. This term can be used for non-LGBTQ allies as well as those within the LGBTQ community who support each other, like a gay man who is an ally to the trans and gender-diverse community. Queer is often used as an umbrella term for diverse genders or sexualities. Some people use queer to describe their own gender and/or sexuality if other terms don't fit. For some people, especially older LGBTQ people, queer has negative connotations because in the past it was used as a discriminatory term. Questioning is sometimes referred to as the Q in LGBTQ. It can also be used as queer and questioning, Rather than be locked into a certainty, some people are still exploring or questioning their gender or sexual orientation. People may not wish to have one of the labels applied to them yet for a variety of reasons, but may still wish to be clear, for example, that they are non-binary or non-heterosexual. It is important that these individuals feel welcome and included in the acronym and in community spaces. Always ask what that identity or term means to that person. Fluidity in time is an important aspect of identity, as identities can shift and change. The data can change. While these labels can mean different things to different people, it is always best practice to ask.
In my research, I use the terms lesbian, gay, and bisexual, so LGB, right, to kind of identify orientation, right? Orientation is who gives you the butterflies, right? Like if you see somebody walking down the hall and you're like, oh my God, they're so cute, and you get the butterfly, that's orientation. That's who you're interested in, right? And then I use TGD, transgender, gender diverse, as to really more focus into like the diversity of who you are, how you feel in your heart, in your soul, who you are as a gendered person, right? So like, I feel like a woman, right? I feel like a man, like I enjoy male things, female things, something in between, neither nor, like, so I use those two terms, right? And I do this because orientation is very different and it's not equivalent than gender. So when you say LGBTQ, IA2 and all the other things, it sounds very easy, but it's not the same group. We're really talking about gender identity. Gender identity takes so many more spaces, right? Like if you're gay, you can dress however you want. It's not a big deal because you're still a woman that is dressing however they want and who likes whoever they want. And you may not even tell that they're gay or bisexual, pansexual, whatever else that you identify. You can't even tell sometimes, right? And sometimes you can, but you just know what that is, right? But when you're transgender, you're talking about your external experience and your external like identity. So it causes this additional like sense of pain in the bones, in the soul of folks when they get misgendered and misidentified. It's like, hopefully now I look kind of female, right? Hopefully like I got the makeup on, all this stuff. And so you would call me, Miss or Mrs. But if I went to Starbucks and you call me Mr., I'd be like, excuse me, isn't it clear that I'm a girl? I'd be not really pissed, but I'd be annoyed. Now, if I went my whole day like that and everywhere I went in months and years and they were like, Mr., I'd be like, man, what's wrong with me? I need to do something to make sure that you know that I'm a girl, not a boy, right? So, that's when these things, it's not just for the external people identifying you correctly of who you are, inside, but also saying, man, I know inside myself that I need to change because this is not what I'm supposed to be. So it's being able to, so people that are TGD or transgender, gender diverse, they have that added layer, that added trauma, that added situation. And statistics show that they have, increased, suicide and increased, depression, anxiety, and everything else because it's that added layer of stuff that LGBT folks don't necessarily have. So we need to see the difference. In addition, sometimes, not all the time, transgender and diverse people might want to do some sort of medical alterations to their body, right? Not all the time. That's also false. Some transgender people do not want to do anything to their body. Some people want to do one thing or another thing or a few things, but that's a very individualized situation where we need to really closely evaluate and let them, really explore that in their mind and their heart before they get any medical procedures, right? But we don't have to worry necessarily about medical procedures if you're in the LGB and the lesbian, gay, bisexual part. But these two things are very different in the way that it affects your life and in what you can do about them and how people in the world see you and how you live your life every day.
From a young age, each of us are equipped with a worldview that develops over time. We are raised and educated a certain way. We meet people who influence us. We absorb news and social media that affects our emotions and perspective. That's part of life. We're learning all the time. And along the way, it's easy to pick up and develop perspectives that aren't ultimately healthy for us or for our neighbors or for our communities, especially in doing this very difficult work in child welfare. When a perspective is shaped by fear or trauma, our natural instincts of fight, flight, or freeze can engage. Our programming takes over and we respond. In this profession, we've learned how to keep many internal responses in check to keep the focus on the needs of our clients. Some days, that is really hard, but we are all human. So when we're thinking about our programming and how we're tempted to respond to different situations, we can heighten our sense of awareness about those reactions. Here are some questions you can ask yourself to better understand your reactions. Am I avoiding having this conversation? If so, why? In conversations about this subject, am I just listening or am I just talking? Where am I placing blame in this situation? How are my answers to these questions affecting the choices I make on behalf of my client? How might my upbringing and life experiences influence my answers to these questions? What we're talking about here is, of course, implicit bias. Implicit bias, also known as unconscious bias, is where you store your learned assumptions, beliefs, and attitudes in your subconscious mind. You might not be aware of them, and yet they play a role in your programming. For example, a famous study was conducted to explore why a greater number of men were performing in the orchestra than women. Was it because men possessed greater musical talents, or was something else going on? Auditions were held blindly to conceal the identity of the musician, and decisions were made purely based on talent. The results were astounding. A blind audition increased the odds of female musicians landing the job by 50%. This study was an important contribution to how we recognize implicit bias. In this case, it was the gender bias among the male conductors. Implicit bias tends to be the root of microaggressions, which can be small, casual actions like put-downs, invalidations, assumptions, stereotypes, insults, and other insensitive behaviors targeted at a person's identity. And people who are very well-intentioned and maybe even very well-educated can still engage in microaggressions based off of implicit bias that has not yet been examined. For the person on the receiving end of these microaggressions, it's important to consider how frequently they may be encountering them. While one inappropriate comment might feel like a paper cut, lots of small cuts can create quite the wound. And we see this with our clients, right? At what point have they had enough and then make detrimental choices? For those who have taken time to learn about these issues and do the personal work to reverse their biases, here's something important to keep in mind. Learning about your own programming is continuous. Just because you have a statement on your website about diversity, equity, and inclusion, or because you've had a training once, doesn't mean that you're now free from bias. No matter how smart we are or the amount of education we have, we can all continue to understand our biases and how they might affect those around us. We're all human. We still make mistakes and hurt people, even when we don't intend to. We can reduce harm, though, if we're committed to doing the work.
Another thing that is a topic of discussion is microaggressions. What? I see some reactions. What are some thoughts about microaggressions, and have you run into them, particularly in the child welfare system?
What's it like to have a gay child, right? It can be as simple as that. And maybe people, like you said, mean well or didn't necessarily know, but it's problematic and it's hurtful because it provides that stigma or the opportunity for that nuance and the negative connotation.
And one of the first people I ever told about my daughter coming out, they said, oh, you know, there's PFLAG. And I said, yeah. And I said, I don't need a support group to be the parent of my child. They were my child the day before they told me, and they're still my child. And, you know, we're working out what this means for us. But because I was surprised. It wasn't like, oh, I've always known. No, not at all. And, but yeah, just that, like, I don't know, I don't think I need to go to a support group to, yeah, that kind of thing is hurtful too. And then it also bothers me because I know the world's that way. and I want to protect. And I want to protect when I encounter children in the child welfare system. I want to protect them, and I don't have that ability to do so.
Sometimes even, our kids might not always catch them. They'll just walk away from an interaction saying, I don't quite feel right.
Yeah, ouch.
I don't know what went wrong, but I can tell that maybe I don't want to talk to this person in the future.
You're basing things off of what you assume to be true of me when, and I'll go a little off grid. It's like being an adult and people telling you, oh, you don't look this, you don't look that.
Yeah.
Well, baby, what it look like? Show me what it looked like. Oh, I would have never known if you wouldn't have said it. Okay. What do you want from me? In this space and in this time, but the microaggressions drive the stigma. The microaggressions are, the cousin to assumptions. That's really all it is. It's the same thing. It's just coming around full circle. What does that do to the child? You're limiting them. You're stereotyping them. Looksism, ableism, all of those things are starting to come into play now. Now you're stepping into a different can of worms. You're knocking on the door of discrimination because that's exactly what's about to happen next.
They're trying to deal with this person or this child that they've heard this information about that doesn't sit well with them. So those microaggressions are how they feel about it. And like you said, the child picks up on it, even though it's like, I've heard people say, you'll grow out of it. It's just them trying to be kind while still kind of getting their point across that they don't like it or they don't think it's okay.
Making sure that we're going out and looking at, hey, what's the answer that the kid has given me? Okay, the kid has given me an answer. Now I'm going to do additional research on my end as a professional to make sure that I'm not making assumptions and then engaging in microaggressions, right? When I talk to the kid next, right? Or when the kid is talking to me. Those are all really important.
Maybe someone wants to have they, them pronouns and you say her and you go, oh, them, don't, I actually had this personal experience with my daughter's partner. And I was like, I said, I just went, them, corrected myself when I said her to them. And she said, good job, you make me feel better. I was like, oh, because I want to treat people the way they want to be treated. And so it was funny. We all laughed, but yeah.
The beautiful, beautiful reminder is, if we do make a misstep, and everybody does, in all kinds of things, not just with terminology, we all can make missteps. We're all human, especially as professionals. There'll be times where we get caught and we're just like, whoa, what's happening? We just proceed forward and go, hey, I'm sorry, when an apology is needed. If it's pronouns, correct it and move forward, right? Being able to just take ownership, which also continues to provide safety for the kid. You're modeling that it's okay to make a mistake. We just own it and keep moving, right? And so terminology, important. Do what you can to know about it. But also, always check in with the kid. We're always checking in with the kid, checking in with their experience at all points in time. Definitely.
And don't be afraid, as a professional, don't be afraid to make those mistakes, or if you do make a mistake. Being on eggshells, walking on eggshells with the kid, they're gonna pick that up. Just as...
No one wants to feel like that, oh, I can't come around this person because they don't know how to talk to me. They don't know what I don't know what they're gonna say. They don't know what they're gonna say. They don't know how to address me. They don't know how to treat me. So they're gonna treat me how they think they should treat me. And that's absolutely wrong. It's okay to have that radical candor, even with a child. That is okay.
And giving them permission to correct you too.
Absolutely.
Right?
Sure.
Like, I'm an adult, and even though I'm an adult, I might still get things wrong. So if I do that, it's okay to correct me. And giving those directions, making them very clear up front so that the child has that expectation. I can keep my autonomy with me, and I can tell this lady it's okay if she got it wrong.
I love it because in this whole conversation, we keep tapping into trauma-informed care, but here we're using it as a mirror for ourselves, right? In our interaction we're creating an environment that works for these kids so that they can talk to us. And that transparency that we've talked about, that trustworthiness, we have to provide it just as fast as we're trying to create it with them, right? Like, they need that back and forth. This is definitely an exchange.
Gender dysphoria is the identity-related distress that some gender-diverse people feel from their body and mind not aligning. We explored this feeling earlier with the thought exercise we did at the start of the module. Dysphoria is that deep discomfort and fear that trans people feel from their physical bodies not aligning with their gender identity. Dysphoria is more than just physical discomfort, though. It's compounded by external forces as well, like societal marginalization. Dysphoria is exacerbated by non-affirming behaviors such as misgendering, like when someone calls a transgender woman he or a transgender man she. For the trans person experiencing these negative social reactions, it can feel like, oh, people will really never see me or treat me as the gender that I know that I am, and further compounds with the dysphoria that they already feel. It's a deeply traumatic and isolating experience, and the reason why so many transgender individuals struggle with anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. So what is the ideal way to treat a child or youth dealing with gender dysphoria? The recommended treatment for gender dysphoria, recommended by the American Psychiatric Association, is gender-affirming care. That is to say, helping the patient achieve closer physical and societal alignment with the gender identity that they most identify with. Now, this treatment is not the same for everyone. For example, some non-binary people do not necessarily experience strong physical dysphoria. They're comfortable with their bodies, but they wish to be socially accepted as a different non-binary gender than the one that they were assigned at birth. If a person experiences social but not physical dysphoria, the treatment is focusing on helping the individual achieve closer social alignment with their gender identity, but may not necessarily include medical intervention. For the vast majority of transgender people, however, physical dysphoria is a major factor in their distress. And depending on recommendations of medical professionals and what the child and their guardians decide on, medical intervention may be used to alleviate and treat dysphoria.
When it comes to transgender and LGBTQ people and child welfare, it's a tough population to work with. A lot of our families don't know what to do. You know, a lot of our families are in foster care, have their own kids, and they're not sure they want an LGBTQ kid in their home. So a lot of it has to do with the foster parents or the adult, the case manager's experience with this population and whether or not they feel competent to deal with it or know enough to deal with it or how to deal with it, or one just to ignore it so they don't have to deal with it. So that's where the discrimination comes in, where then things that maybe should have been caught are lost. So for example, if I have an LGBTQ child in my foster home, let's say I was a foster parent and I had a gay child in my foster parent in my home, I might think, oh my God, like, I don't want them to be in the room with other boys or other girls because maybe they're gonna have sex or there's something's gonna happen. I totally get the liability issue, but we're assuming that kid wants to have sex to begin with, and the only reason we're thinking about it is because they're gay, right? Or the only reason we're thinking about it is because they're transgender. So it really may not even have anything to do with the kid themselves. That kid may not have anything in their history that has to do with sexual activity. And you may actually talk with the kid, like one participant that we talked to during our thing, and other kids I've talked to that are in care, they're like, I'm not interested in sex. Like, I'm so not there yet. Like, maybe one day, just not now. But yet I'm separating these kids because they're gay. So is it because they're gay or because they're sexual, or because of the myth, right, that gay kids or trans kids are sexual? So in a situation like that, the adult, as an adult, I'm guilty at some point in my career where I'm like, let's just be safe than sorry. Let's just take care of them because it's better that we just, just in case, because of liability, and we don't want kids to be hurt, and we don't want kids to be raped. We don't want kids, any of that stuff, right? But ultimately, what you're telling the other kid that you're serving, the gay or trans kid, is that, because you have the situation, we're going to do this thing to you and you can't be with your friend and the roommate not because you're a bad kid or not because of anything, but because we don't trust you and we just assume that you're going to be this evil, deviant, sexual person, right? Not anything to do with facts, right? But just to do with our assumption and our bias, and ultimately that's discrimination. I, at least myself as a provider, I have to take a look at myself and any staff that I train or that I have. We need to be honest with ourselves. It's okay if those biases come out, but we need to look at it, reflect on it, and make wiser decisions to make sure we're not hurting kids in the process, right? To really make all the kids safe, not just the non-LGBTQ kids safe.
When you're working in the child welfare system and you're like, I'm not asking questions about pronouns to everybody walking in the door, and I'm not going to ask about sexual orientation or what partners have you had, rather than have you had any girlfriends, to the boy, or any boyfriends to the girl, right? We're making those assumptions.
Why are we asking little children that anyway?
We're setting ourselves up as professionals for failure, right? Absolute failure, because we've missed an entire part of the experience for these kiddos.
And they're going to shut down as soon as you do. As soon as you do it, that's it. You just missed that opportunity, and everything that you will get will be short answer, and it will be pure trash after that. They're going to tell you exactly what they want you to hear, not what they feel, not what's bothering them, not the reason why they're there. They're just going to tell you what they feel, so because they know right then and there, you're not here to listen to me. You heard me, but you're not listening. So
your intake will become truncated at that point. Another thing to keep in mind is what happens with the intersection of sexual orientation or gender identity and then sexual abuse. If you start making assumptions about sexual orientation, is this kid going to report things to you? Maybe the person they experienced sexual abuse with was same sex. Right? Yeah. Maybe they're now feeling very confused about how to have this conversation. You may have just completely stilted your entire investigation by not being open to these questions, right? Not having that conversation, not asking for the kid's definition of what's going on. You have lost a chance to really be able to figure out what's going on, particularly when we're trying to be trauma-informed, right?
When I first started in the field, when a young male came in and had been sexually abused by a male, when we were talking about them telling, my interview with them about to figure out which direction we were going in, one of the first things a lot of young boys would say to me is, "I'm not gay." It was the first words out of their mouth, which made me very sad. And I just always said, okay, because that was what they were worried about. And so I wanted to make it okay for them to tell me. I thought, I don't know if you are or not, but okay. But it was really important because I am sure, you could tell that was their first worry. Mm-hmm. So we had to get that out of the way so that they could tell me what happened. And I'm sure, with sexual abuse, when your first experiences before your body and all your hormones and mind are ready for it, it's triply confusing on sexual orientation. Maybe you are, but then this happened to you and it's not a good thing. And so just trying to be open to the conversation without assigning any kind of value to who you are with your sexuality or your gender identity.
Definitely. I have also had experiences, working with kids who have been through sexual abuse and then come through, and there's a lot of confusion about, people. An assumption that is often made is that, well, if they experience, what have I heard? well, this girl has been sexually abused by a guy, this must be why she's now lesbian. And that is a very, very, very hurtful and inaccurate, not proven by any studies that are out there at all, assumption made. So a lot of times, because that assumption is being made so much out and about, we've talked about how assumptions can change behavior, right? A lot of times those kiddos might just not disclose anything, right? Because they're just like, hey, apparently this is what's supposed to happen, and this is not my experience internally. So is my experience of my sexuality now trauma? Right? And so we want to be able to have conversations that validate identity and also correct mistruths like that, right? That this trauma does not determine what your identity is. Your identity is consistent, it is there, it is yours, even as you're healing and becoming a survivor through these processes of trauma, right?
The trauma that surrounds sexual abuse, it changes you. I can speak as a victim. I can smile, I can laugh, I can talk about it all day, every day now. But during that space, at that time, at that moment, who do you turn to? Now, you have your parents who love you to death. You have your grandparents, they love you to death. They want what's best for you. They don't understand it. It's new to them. This is foreign to them. You feel alone in that space. That's where the isolation takes place. And then this is where you start to question not only your existence, but who you are and what do you mean? You know, are you gay? Are you bisexual? What are you? Are you just a pass around piece of something? You lose who you are as a child. You lose that. The innocence is gone. Oh, yeah. But who do you go to professionally? And then, just like you said, you have to say, oh, I'm not gay, I think.
Well, yeah, that's good.
After this, I think, well, I wasn't getting female attraction, now I'm getting male attraction from people that are older.
And also your body reacts.
Yes.
You know, the body reacts whether your mind's telling you something different. I mean, that's just natural for, you know, all that. And I too, I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. So, so for a long time I thought, well, I'm gay because I got molested by these men. And I'm thinking, wow, maybe I need to take a look at that or whatever. But yeah, but your body reacts. So yeah, am I gay because, you know, I liked it? Is there something wrong with me? You know, that kind of stuff.
And children, they self-blame. It's my fault if I hadn't acted so gay or, you know, whatever. And so children make things that it's their fault, that it's not their fault. And so I think we have to really give them that message that this happened to you by a person who was wrong, not nothing, you know, that you did.
Critical, definitely.
This is a conversation that's needed because oftentimes people don't see things from a survivor, and especially when it happened to them as a child. You know, oh, you were just a kid, you're not going to remember that. Yes, you do. It follows you for the rest of your life and it impacts you until adulthood. I'll say it. For years, I wasn't able to sit in a room with men. I couldn't play football. I couldn't play soccer. I couldn't play any sport that required contact. It was too much, you know, and I'm the oldest. I have brothers. I have cousins, all male. I couldn't interact in the wrestling anymore. I couldn't do it. It was too traumatizing. And then to go to a professional and have them say, oh, well, you may have enjoyed that. It seems like you like male attention. What? Oh, okay. I guess I blacked my own eye, huh? I guess I bruised a few of my own ribs because some of us fight. I fought back. I was just overpowered. As a child, you're vulnerable, you're open, and then someone come and they change who you are. so to speak. And then society labels you. Oh, you were this way from the beginning. It doesn't matter if I was or if I wasn't. It was never that person's place to do this to me or to cause this. So, still standing. Oh yeah, I'm still a fighter, babe.
Let's think about the support systems that exist for LGBTQ youth. Consider the circles of people who may be around them. Who might be the first person an LGBTQ youth goes to for support? Who might be the second person? Who might be the third person? Who, often, though not always, is the last person? How might these answers change in situations of abuse and neglect? Where do you fit in? For some kids, it's possible that you are the only person they can turn to for support. In the next section, we'll talk about how you can be there for them when that moment arrives.